Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for taking some time to join us. The purpose of these town halls is to not only receive your questions, and we're speaking to a number that were received in advance, but also addressing your questions in the chat. So I'm so pleased to know that so many of you are on these town halls, and we will continue these over the next several weeks to ensure that everyone has as much information, most importantly to stay safe and healthy, but so that you can return to the university and engage in your classes and your academic work and your co-curricular work together as safely as possible. The planning for the fall 2020 semester continues to have lots of layers of engagement. Of course, most important to us as one of the 17 institutions of the UNC system, all 17 institution chancellors, chief academic officers, chief student affairs officers, and health personnel have been meeting regularly, basically since late March.
With Jacob.
We have been also directed by the UNC System Board of Governors, who has the final authority together with the president of the system, currently Dr. Bill Roper as interim president, and president-elect Mr. Peter Hans, with what would happen in the event that the entire system has to pivot and return to return to online instruction only. We're also following the governor's proclamations. As you know, while we thought that the governor would move us to phase 3 as early as June, because the virus is still prevalent and still having some kind of spread and certainly negative effect across the state in different and particularly different areas, we are following what the governor's protocols will be. We expect to hear from Governor Cooper sometime around the first week of August, perhaps even August 7th, which is tentatively scheduled for his next statement about the reopening or not of the state. We're also following local Department of Health advice, and we've gotten terrific medical and health protocol advice from our colleagues at MAHEC, the Mountain Area Health Education Collaborative. And we are following all to make sure that we have as safe an environment for each and every one of us as is possible. We've been working literally since the summer. Our faculty, our staff, definitely the Emergency Operations Committee that's been making so many of the decisions about protocols. I'm very proud and very grateful of the hard work that everyone on campus has done, both our staff and our faculty, to prepare for a return to in-person instruction. We've also been listening to students on social media and other places to make sure that we know what you're thinking of and how we can make the best chance to address any questions that you have. Again, the decisions about opening are ones that are coming directly from the UNC system leadership. We are following their requests that we return to in-person instruction, and we are doing that as safely as possible and feel very supported by the system to do what we're doing. So much of what the pandemic has reminded us of is our interdependence with one another when we're in an academic community. Basically making sure that all of us return to campus, not just for the first day of class, but for every day following that, as long as we are in pandemic conditions, and that we are taking self-care very seriously, so that if any of us have symptoms, we stand down from returning to campus and we do what we can to get well and to get healthy before we return to in-person instruction. We are making as many decisions as we can in as humane a fashion as we can possibly muster to allow our faculty and our students to say what is best for them and to accommodate multiple requests from our faculty, staff, and students at all times going forward. In the meantime, we've also had the privilege actually of videotaping our commencement ceremony that was to have occurred on the 9th of May, when we learned from the governor that we could not open safely and gather the 550 May 2020 graduates safely, even socially distanced on the quad. it was clear that we had to move to a virtual platform. Provost Campbell and I have been a part of developing the ceremony, and Sarah Broberg and her team are doing a fantastic job of editing that ceremony. Please, students, mark on your calendar August 1 at 9 a.m. in the morning. The video will be posted, and you'll be able to see not only our 4 honorary degree recipients, including Dr. Patrice Harris, who's the immediate past president of the American Medical Association, as our key commencement speaker, but also hear our alma mater, see the pictures and well wishes of many of our students in the class of 2020. So August 1st, 9 o'clock in the morning. Finally, we've begun seeing how much energy and excitement from many of the students who have been making the appointments and moving their belongings into the residence halls over these last 2 weekends. Vice Chancellor Bill Haggard tells me that we have about 600 students who have moved their possessions into their rooms in the residence halls and have gone back and now will return sometime around our opening date, which remains August 10th, with many of our first-time first-year students coming for pre-rendezvous and other programs earlier in the week before August 10th. If you have any questions or concerns, please be in touch with your residence life staff or with Bill Haggard and his team. We want to make this as welcoming a situation for all of you as you return to campus, both those going into your own apartments and also the 1350 or so who are moving into our residence halls. So those are some opening comments. Let me now turn to some of the questions that you submitted about health and safety and do my best to respond to these, and I may also call on some others to pick up on answering. First question was, why are we even returning to campus considering that numbers, and I think the implication here is of COVID infected individuals, were much lower in the spring when we initially moved to online and remote instruction? When during your spring break last spring, we realized that the pandemic had started in the United States, and though the number of infected cases were very small, in fact, Asheville, as the whole state goes, was one of the areas that easily flattened the curve very early. We dismissed, though, based on the health advice of public health officials and the Board of Governors at that point, asking us to move all of our operations to stay open for sure, but to move our operations to online only. And so the way in which we are handling this now, we now have very good science-based protocols and research that suggest how we can reconvene for in-person instruction safely, abiding the protocols that we've all heard about from national media and from the educational media and from your university. We need to wear face coverings at all times. We need to stay socially distanced. And you'll see in the videos up on the coronavirus website, on our UNCA website, some videos about what Carpin looks like, what the dining hall looks like, what Ramsey will look like. And it does look very different, but we have found a way to socially distance our classrooms, our academic spaces, and our student leadership and co-curricular spaces. So because we know so much more, this makes sense to reconvene, to get back to our academic mission. I could see the excitement, particularly last weekend when I visited with some families who were checking in. Very, very clear that folks are excited to be back. Now we know how to do it safely as possible, and that's why we are excited to welcome all of you back to campus. Second question, what would be the point at which the semester becomes all online? First, who would make that decision? That decision would be made by the UNC system leadership, and we would follow their protocols. I think the answer to this is that we will be following metrics of when we reach capacity in quarantine or in isolation. When we reach our capacity, then we will hear from the UNC system about when or not it's time for us to continue and stay open, but to return to all online. Now, there's a possibility that of the 17 institutions, some institutions may have a large outbreak and may be asked by the system leadership to move to online for a period of time or for the balance of the semester. That could happen, I suppose, to any of our institutions, but the decisions will be made there, and we will act accordingly, much like we did last spring when we moved to online only. Is switching to virtual learning still only decided by the UNC system? That answer is yes. As the system is not seated in Asheville, how can we ensure that the needs of UNCA students, faculty, and staff are being met, as well as the surrounding community? Well, I can tell you that the 17 chancellors have been meeting, but so have the chief academic officers and provosts. Kai has been involved in, I believe, every one of those meetings. I've been on the chancellor calls. Vice Chancellor Bill Haggard has also been doing the same thing, and so have our health professionals like Jay Kutzbach and others. Yes, the decision is made at the system level, but we have made it clear that we believe that we are in good shape to welcome you back with the highest and best in class health protocols, or we would not open. And so we are in a place where we believe, particularly with our scale and our size, and frankly, our regard for being a closely knit academic community, that if we all take care of ourselves, if we follow the protocols I've mentioned earlier, if we get tested, then we know that we are taking care of ourselves and our community in the very best way possible. I believe that we have been a real advocate for UNC Asheville students, faculty, and our staff colleagues together, and that we are in a position to do this as correctly and in the best way possible that we can do. Next, are face shields as acceptable as face coverings alone, or do we need to wear masks with face shields? Well, generally, the most important science suggests that the key to this is to all of us wear a mask that covers our nose and our mouth and fits securely onto our faces. We will have at least two masks for every faculty, staff, and student here. We already have secured those. They're washable. They can be easily tossed in the wash or rinsed out and worn again the next day. But we also know that face shields will be available for some individuals who cannot wear a mask, and for those faculty members who will be teaching behind a plexiglass at the podium in a classroom, where they would like to see their face seen, where they would like to have their face seen, and they would be able to teach with the face mask behind the plexiglass in ways that are safe for the faculty members as well as for our students. Number 5, what kind of measures are being put in place to make sure that no students enter buildings such as Highsmith or Brown without a mask? A couple of things. Some of those high traffic buildings will have handheld thermal sensors actually taking your temperature. It's a good reminder about our responsibilities to each other, but it's a good way for us to spot if someone has a fever, which can be a leading indicator of the coronavirus. And they can get tested and then be either quarantined if they have had contact with other people but tested negative, or they'll be isolated for a period of up to 14 days if they test positive. We are ensuring that at our Student Health Center we have plenty of tests, and that other health organizations in the region will have tests that allow our faculty and staff through their private providers to be tested. So if someone's not wearing a mask, they're not going to be allowed to enter a building. That is both protocol that's been asked of by the State Human Resources Association and Council, but for our students, it's really volunteer, but it is required. It is the only and the key way that we can make sure that we mitigate the spread of the virus. All persons will be reminded through a number of health ambassadors who will be our students that we have new community expectations of one another and new protocols to follow. If they refuse, they will be asked to leave the building, and repeat offenders will certainly have some approach from any number of us, probably Vice Chancellor Bill Haggard's staff, to ensure that we figure out how we get them to comply or ask them to step away from the semester if they cannot comply with that basic idea. Now let's report on reimbursement. Will we be reimbursed for housing in the likely event that we are once again sent home? This is a decision that also will be made by the UNC system. And at this point, I do not know what the answer to that question is. Will tuition for strictly online courses be lowered? No. The Board of Governors, together with the system leaders, last week, the Board of Governors voted that because of the fixed costs that all of us have, regardless of the modality of your instruction, whether it's online, hybrid, or in person, that all will be charged the same amount for your tuition, regardless of the modality that your faculty are using. If UNCA were to move to only online, would a portion of our tuition be reimbursed? After last Thursday's vote, the answer to that is no, from what I understand at this point. Why does it appear that students are being charged $750 to cancel on-campus housing when they did not know the online options they would have until the 20th of July? Do you have plans for waiving the $750 fee? Yes, the $750 fee will be waived as long as we are in the current situation with the COVID affecting our campus life. Number 5, what is the university doing to aid students whose financial aid is severely diminished due to the outbreak? We are dealing on a case-by-case basis and have been to ensure that every student can sustain his or her financial aid and can hold that aid if they are not enrolled this semester. But we are working every day with a number of students, but always on a case-by-case basis, which is the way aid is packaged and delivered anyway. Last thing is, what's the reasoning behind canceling the outdoor commencement for May 2020? I think I've already explained that. And what will happen in the fall of 2020 for our likely December 2020 graduates? That's yet to be determined. And frankly, we want our students who are coming back to campus who are hoping to graduate by December of 2020 to be a part of that decision. So we'll keep you posted. At this time, I'd like to move on to Provost Kai Campbell to answer some of the questions that came in regarding academic affairs. Kai?
Thank you. So the institution, including the faculty, have been working enormously hard to make sure that we are ready for students this fall in whatever the mode that students engage. And I know that there have been a number of questions about how this fall's offerings might differ from the spring. Would like to point out a few ways in which faculty have been working, in some cases all summer, to prepare for students online. First, there have been workshops offered by the UNC system. These are workshops on teaching online that have been led in part by one of our own faculty members. Professor Ellen Pearson is one of about 3 faculty system-wide who's been working to help prepare faculty across all of the 17 UNC system institutions on things like redesigning courses, uses of various technologies and the like. About 100 of our own faculty have taken those workshops. And in addition, our Center for Teaching and Learning has been working hard with faculty individually and in various other forums, small groups, to ensure that faculty are really well prepared to teach online. And then finally, some faculty have been engaged in courses with an organization called Quality Matters, kind of a gold standard for teaching online. So, you know, they're all through these 3 mechanisms, faculty have worked exceptionally hard to make sure that they have all of the preparations necessary to have a course online in the fall that works really well. As many of you may know, many offered courses this summer as well in that online mode. And so we expect things will be quite different than, better than they were even in the spring. Right now, we have about a little less than 1/3 of our courses online. About the same number of those are hybrid, and the remaining are in person. So a little over 1/3 are actually in person right now. For those students who have a documented need to engage in remote learning, meaning they are unable to be present under our circumstances, we hope that all of you have completed the online form. If you don't have access to that form or missed it, we can make sure that we get that link out to folks. You should have received an email to that form. And we know that there are a number of folks who have already submitted and are in the process of getting documentation or various stages of the process of engaging in that accommodations process. So the first step for any of those students who have this need will be to try to see if we can choose some courses among those that are already online to see if they can substitute for perhaps a course that you're signed up for that is in person. After that, if there can be a substitution, that will probably be the easiest thing to do. If you have approved accommodations and you can't find a substitute course, we're wanting to work with you and the faculty member in the courses that are in person or hybrid to see if we can determine a way for you to engage in that course remotely. This is a process that necessarily needs to involve the faculty member. Some have asked, why do I need to engage the faculty member if I've already been approved? You know, the way that the course is delivered, whether it's lecture-based or discussion-based, what kinds of in-class activities are imagined, and the like, are all really necessary to understand, to know what solution is going to be best for you. And so we will be encouraging students to engage in a conversation with the faculty to see what's possible. Faculty have already been really creative about some options. In some cases, it's as simple as opening up a laptop and being able to provide a way for you to zoom in. In other cases, it's a little more challenging based on the nature of the class. In some rare circumstances, we think there will not be a remote option. And in that case, we'll work with you to try to figure out what alternatives there are in those moments. We do want to be clear that for some of you, there have been questions about what happens if I have a class that is in person or hybrid, demanding to be in person, and then you have to be online for a class, and then let's say maybe perhaps very quickly back to an in-person class again. We do want you to be aware that the library is one location where we have computers available for students who need quick access in case you do not have your own laptop or access to go online. And so we will have the library, and we will be looking to expand some other options. There are some other computer labs that we're going to try to make available so that you can quickly go from in-person or hybrid onto online and then back if necessary. Graduating seniors should be aware that the UNCA courses taken online count toward your final 30 hours in residence. And so, you know, these online courses, they are valid and count for satisfying that requirement. If you have a need to have a conversation, your situation you have questions about in particular, please do reach out to the registrar. The registrar's office is able to work with you and talk with you about making sure that that requirement is fulfilled. Attendance as well as grading and other policies will be set by individual faculty, but we are encouraging flexibility when it comes to COVID-related issues. We know that there is some concern about what happens with respect to attendance or grading or other things. Again, it's very course dependent, it's very faculty dependent, and so, but everyone is understanding of the situation that we're in and is encouraged to have some flexibility, particularly if we know that you've been quarantined or have to engage in some isolation. We'll certainly work with you in those circumstances. Classrooms have been modified to make sure that we allow for appropriate social distancing, or in some cases, as has already been mentioned, there are sneeze guards and other measures put in place so that we do not anticipate changing the size of the course, the number of students enrolled. What we've done is adapt the classrooms and made sure that for a given enrollment, that the class of the size can accommodate, the physical size of the classroom can accommodate the enrollment of the course. And so we don't anticipate changing the size of classes, the number of folks enrolled to accommodate, to be able to, we don't anticipate having to do that to make sure that classes are safe. Some have asked about the special winter sessions. In particular, will they be running? And before I answer that, let me just say quickly that we are thinking about offering 1 or possibly 2 winter sessions. They will be completely optional and entirely online. The first would be offered in the 3 weeks between Thanksgiving and Christmas, and then the second just after the new year. We don't know yet whether or not they will run, and certainly not yet what courses might be offered. That's something that we're gonna look into over the course of the first approximately 6 to 8 weeks, 6 to 7 weeks of the semester, and try to see whether or not we can offer a robust set of offerings. We hope that by the end of September we'll have a decision about that, and then be able to provide information about what students can enroll in at that time. So I think that is about it, and I think I'll turn it over to Bill Haggard now to answer some questions about student affairs.
Thank you, Provost Campbell, and good afternoon, everyone. It sure is good to see you. I've come to you from my office in Highsmith Union, and I can't wait until I see many of you walking around this building. It's good to see you on this call. I look forward to seeing you in person. As the Chancellor mentioned in her opening comments, over the last 2 weekends, we did have the opportunity for some students to move their belongings in early to keep the density of the move-in process down for the purpose of COVID-19. And we're very grateful to the 600 or so students who have already moved in their belongings and headed back home. We look forward to seeing you coming within the next couple of weeks, coming back to campus. There have been several questions here about residence life, so I'll start in that area. And then we're doing staggered move-in by appointment starting this Sunday with those first-year students coming to pre-rendezvous, first-year students moving in Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, and then our remaining continuing students coming in the Saturday and Sunday right before the first day of class. So we look forward to seeing you all on campus. Some questions related to our residence hall. There's a question about, will there be a reduced number of people living in our halls this year? Yes, there will be. Part of that was by design, and part of that was for students who elected not to live on campus. But we really feel that with the preparations that we have been taking to get ready for this semester, that on campus can be one of the safest places you can be. So we still encourage you, if there are those of you who are still contemplating on that, continuing students who may be still deciding where to live on or off campus, we encourage you to call our housing office and talk through that with folks, because we really have, that staff and others have been working hard for the past 4 months developing a great number of protocols. We did increase our number of available singles, so there is that option for you as well if you desire a single. It's a question about, will we be allowing guests in the residence halls? The answer to that for safety purposes is no. If someone does not live on campus, they may not visit you in your residence hall. We encourage you to visit somewhere else, hopefully outside or another place, just to maintain the safety of our residence halls. And there won't be any overnight guests. Obviously, there'll be exceptions to that in special circumstances, whether that's family members or others. But in general, it will be a no guests allowed. Except for those students who do live on campus. If you have a friend or a colleague you want to see who lives in another one of our residence halls, we will allow other students to visit you in your residence hall, but not overnight. What are some of the other safety precautions we're taking? We're reducing the occupancy in our common areas through the removal of furniture and those types of things. We'll be reducing the occupancy in a variety of different ways in our laundry rooms and kitchens. So please just listen to your area director or your RA. All these things will be covered in your first hall meeting that will happen for new students on Thursday the 6th, and for continuing students later that weekend. Are students expected to socially distance in their residence hall rooms or suites? That's a very good question. So as far as all of our precautions, the wearing a face covering, staying 6 feet apart, and those types of things, all those have to be followed in all the public areas, including the hallways and the common areas in our residence halls. When you are in your room or in your suite, that will be treated as a household, just like the household you might be living in right now. As always, our housing staff, our residential education staff, in our opening meetings will be talking with you about roommate and suite mate agreements. We do that normally without COVID-19. We'll be placing a special emphasis on that, encouraging you and giving you strategies to how you can come to agreements with your roommate or with your suite mates about social distancing and about mask wearing and those types of things. But it will be treated as your household where you work out those things within your room or within your suite. We have also had questions about circulation and air quality and breathing the same air. I'm grateful for that question because it gives us the opportunity to talk about some of the HVAC engineering that was already present in our residence halls to give us the best possible air quality and on normal circumstances to reduce humidity. Part of that is, and it depends on each and every building, and if you have a question, please call Volley Barnwell at our Housing Operations Office or shoot an email to Volley. But in all of our buildings, at least at the room level or at the suite level, the air is exhausted to the outside. The air in all of our restrooms, in all of our residence halls, excuse me, is exhausted to the outside. So you are not breathing recirculated air from other rooms in the building. There is no circulation that goes from one room to another in our residence halls. Now, some of the air in the common areas or the hallways are recirculated, but when you're in your room, your air is exhausted to the outside. And we have had to make no changes to our HVAC, our ventilation in our residence halls because of COVID-19. That's the way it has always been. If you have more specific questions about your specific area, please talk to Volley Barnwell. But it's not like being on an airplane. It's not being on other places where you're just recirculating the same air. We have always exhausted that air to the outside to have a good fresh air mix in our residence halls. What is the plan to keep other students safe if one or more students get sick? So I'm going to now transition into what if you have symptoms? What if you wake up one morning and you do have a temperature, you do feel sick? What do you do? Immediately you are to call health services. And we encourage you to do that as quickly as possible. We will be asking all students and reminding all students on a regular basis to check your symptoms every morning. We encourage you to bring your own thermometer. If you do not have a thermometer, our RAs will be equipped with a handheld thermometers to do a no-touch temperature check. If you don't have a thermometer, we encourage you to bring your own. But if you have a fever, if you have the other symptoms that have been listed in the symptom checker emails that you will receive, we encourage you to call health services immediately. And there will be a phone assessment that will be done by a medical provider. And at that point, that medical provider in our health services will give you the next instructions, and we'll let you know if you need to be tested or not. If you need to be tested and if the medical provider believes that you are a possible case, then you will be asked to quarantine. We have reserved and set aside at this point a minimum of 62 beds, which we are anticipating we will be increasing that number as we get closer to the beginning of the fall semester. And you would be quarantined in a space, asked to stay there for 14 days. There will be health services personnel checking on you. Your meals, if you're on a meal plan, which you will be if you're in a residence hall, will be delivered to you, and you can order the food that you would like to eat, and other student affairs staff will be checking in with you for your other needs. So that's what would happen if you showed symptoms and if a medical provider felt that you are a possible case. The testing would happen in our health services, and that is where all student testing will be offered. So we encourage you to take advantage of that, and it's very, very important for you to follow that very, very important expectation, and that is checking your own symptoms and then reporting to health services when you have symptoms. And then if you have been in contact with someone, that we will do contact tracing based on that, based on a positive test. And during that contact tracing, if you have been in close contact with another student, unprotected, without facial coverings, within 6 feet, for a period of at least 15 minutes, then you will most likely be asked to quarantine as well. So that's why it's so important that you please follow the directions that we are giving you related to your own self-care. There's a question about if we close down mid-semester, what would happen with personal belongings? What happened in mid-March is something that we weren't expecting. It came upon us. We have been doing 4 months of planning since that time. It is our expectation that we won't do a mid-semester shutdown, but that's not something we can guarantee. But obviously, we will work with you for the most convenient way possible to take care of your personal belongings. But we really hope, because of all of the precautions we've been taking and all the planning that we've been doing, that will not happen. Is there a place where students, especially residential students, do not have to wear a mask? So as I mentioned earlier, in your own room, with the agreement of your own roommate, if you have a roommate, that would be one place, or your suite mates as well. But if you are in public, in any public area on campus, we require a mask. If you are outdoors walking for exercise at 6 a.m. and there aren't many other people around doing that, that would be a time where you probably wouldn't have to wear a mask. But during the normal day, during the normal times, during the normal operations of our campus, if you are in a public place, we encourage you or require you to wear a mask. So that is, and to always social distance within 6 feet. Now getting into some other areas of student life, there's been a question about our student organizations. Will they be canceled? Absolutely not. Our student organizations are a vital part of our quality of student life. They will still be having meetings. We've been working in Highsmith. The Highsmith staff has been also adjusting the spaces in Highsmith, so your student organization will most likely meet in a larger space, socially distanced with face coverings, but our student organization meetings and activities are still going to be so important to us. But the kinds of activities will be adjusted based on size of the activities, capacity of spaces, and those types of things. And as we in North Carolina hopefully someday move from phase 2 to phase 3, there will be a lot of discussion, a lot of communication with you on how that impacts your student activities, your student organizations. Questions about campus recreation. Campus recreation will still be operating. We will still do some modified outdoor activities through our outdoor programs. We'll be doing some modified group fitness programs that may be indoors outdoors rather than indoors. But at this point, even through all the preparations we've done, we will not be opening the Sherrill Center Fitness Center until we move to phase 3 or we get other instructions from the system office. Our campus recreation staff has moved the equipment farther apart from each other. We have new protocols. We have enhanced supplies for cleaning. Our plan when we do open is to close for certain hours to do some disinfecting and cleaning during the day. But right now, as it stands, we will not open our Sherrill Fitness Center until we move into phase 3 as a state. And that's consistent with what the other UNC system campuses are doing. Some question about parking fees. If you're an off-campus student, will the parking fees be reduced? No, that it's one fee for parking anytime as it normally is. But there's also a question about, would I get a refund on my parking pass if I am staying home because I have a totally online schedule? Absolutely. You would get a refund if that were the case. And there's a question about our mental health services. Our mental health services in our health and counseling center have remained open and active during the remainder of spring semester and over the summer. And I know many of you on this call have used those services. We will continue to be fully staffed for either remote or in-person counseling, depending on the relationship you have with your counselor or therapist and your desires. We are planning to have a higher frequency of requests for our counseling services, and we plan to staff appropriately if necessary by adding some part-time counselors if it calls for that. But right now, our very dedicated staff in counseling and Health and Counseling Center is prepared to care for you and to provide the services you need during this coming year. And lastly, there was a question about expectations for students when returning to their families who may have family members that are at risk. We encourage you again to use our Health and Counseling Center as an opportunity to get advice if you have unique family situations after you have been on campus and when you return home, and we can provide the right kind of advice for you there based on the facts of your individual case. So that's about it. One last final thing I'd like to mention, as the Chancellor mentioned earlier, we will have 40 new wellness ambassadors, health ambassadors that will be peer advisors and peer ambassadors for good health during COVID-19, who will be doing a lot of work to really try to affect the right kind of culture to make sure that we're all safe and protected during this time on campus. So look for those folks. I know many of you on the call have probably applied for one of those positions because we've had a real good response to that call for applications, and we're grateful for that. So thank you very much. Any further questions, please feel free to contact me or any of our other offices in Student Affairs.
Heather, let's move to you for some questions that came from our students about employees.
Yep. Hi, everybody. My name is Heather Parlier. I'm Vice Chancellor for Human Resources, Institutional Equity, and General Counsel. Thank you for joining us today, and thank you for your questions. I have just a few questions, and I'll try to go through this quickly so that we can answer other questions you might have. The first is if a student has an on-campus job that can be done remotely, can they continue to hold that position even while taking an all online schedule? Generally speaking, yes, and we've gotten guidance about federal work study positions. Generally, those are not allowed to be remote, but the federal government has said that we can have those be remote as well. So if you have an existing position, please work with your supervisor about how to continue to work in that position. Next question was, how is the university taking care of our wage workers? Specifically, the question is about cafeteria and janitorial staff. So our dining staff are employed through a separate contractor through Chartwells. They have very specific protocols in place. They have vetted those protocols with us, and they are very much taking care of their employees. For our operations and housekeeping employees, those are UNC Asheville employees. They're not quote wage workers, they're salaried employees with benefits. Many of them have been working on campus since March, and they have been keeping our campus clean. They are working to make our campus a safer space. We are very focused on their health and well-being. They are considered essential employees. For a period of time when we were in phase one, they were receiving extra compensation. That has not continued, but we have given them PPE. They are given assignments so that they are able to work in a more isolated space, so that they're farther than 6 feet apart from other employees. So their health and safety is important to us, as well as the dining employees. And then there's a question about Asheville City Schools shifting to fully online and what the implications of this are on the UNC Asheville community. So Asheville City Schools, Henderson County Schools, and Madison County Schools are all online for the first 9 weeks. Buncombe County has not made a decision. Buncombe County is still saying 1 week on, 1 week off. We suspect that may change. So clearly that would affect a lot of our population. We understand some students and some of our faculty and staff as well. Faculty and staff, we have been encouraging them to take advantage of either teaching online or having some sort of flexible schedule, and the same goes for our staff. We have reached out specifically to our employees who don't have the option to work remotely or to teach online to see what needs they might have. Last question was about what if our faculty test positive? I'm going to answer for both our faculty and staff because our students interact with both faculty and staff. So if we have a faculty or staff member who's on campus who tests positive, we will have contact tracing. So similar for students who might test positive. And part of that contact tracing would be contacting anyone, including a student, who may have had close contact with that faculty or staff member. And so we'll be doing that same protocol that we would be doing with students. And I know there's a lot of questions in the chat. I'm going to pass it back to the Chancellor to make sure she can wrap things up.
Sarah, let's turn to you for any. I've read quite a few of the ones that are in the chat, but are there special questions you'd like to raise?
Yes, thank you all for your questions. We've been compiling them into a Google Doc, and so we'll work through these by section. The first questions are related to our Student Affairs Division. Dr. Haggard, could you please just kind of reiterate some of the details around the isolation practices and the facilities that we have on campus?
Sure. So I think most of you know, but just to review, quarantine is if you are a suspected case or if you have been exposed and you need to be separated for your safety. Isolation is when you have symptoms and or have had a positive test and you are sick. So we have a minimum of 20 beds in Scott Hall in Governor's Village. We have identified 3 other guest apartments in our residence halls, and the first floor of Founders Hall we're reserving for quarantine and isolation. We're adding doors at the end of the hallways in the first floor of Founders Hall, and there is no, as I talked about the HVAC, the air conditioning and heating earlier, there is no circulation with the rest of the building from the first floor and when it comes from air on the ground floor of Founders. So we're identifying those spaces, and we will use some for quarantine and some for isolation. And anybody in quarantine and isolation will receive the services they need either remotely, online, or if they need services such as meals or others, the student affairs staff will be helping with that. And there will be, again, health services, medical providers, or nurses checking on students in isolation every day.
Thank you, Dr. Haggard. A reminder to the chat, I thank you all for being engaged, but we also want to be respectful in the ways that we're engaging with one another. I appreciate the engagement, but let's please make sure we're focused on really answering, getting to the questions at hand here. Dr. Haggard, just a couple of other questions. There was one talking about, is there a possibility to remain on campus if there is a choice to go online? So perhaps some of their classes have shifted online. Would they have the option to remain in the residence halls?
Thank you for raising that, Sarah, because that was in my prepared remarks and I forgot to mention that, but absolutely. If you have a completely online schedule and still want to be here as part of campus life and take advantage of other opportunities here on campus that you wouldn't get to do at home, we encourage you to do so. We already have some students who have made that decision, who have learned that they have a completely online schedule, who are still wanting to be here in Asheville. And we know there's students, just like at the end of last spring, when there were some students for whom going home was not the best option. We still welcome you in our residence halls. So absolutely is the answer to that question. If you choose to live on, even though your classes are remote, we encourage you to do so and we support that.
Thank you. And then one last question on this particular topic. Will students, should they require isolation or quarantine, will that be done at the university, or would they have the choice to return home?
Another good question. Yes, they will always have a chance to return home. And on each and every case, health services staff will have those kinds of conversations with each individual student based on the facts of that particular case, again, and the unique characteristics of that case. But one option is, if that's what is best for the student and if that's what's best for the family, to either quarantine or isolate at home, they are definitely welcome to do that.
Thank you. We'll move on to academic affairs. Provost Campbell, a couple of questions for you. Could you talk about whether the shared computer terminals in the library will be cleaned between each use, or what's the protocol for that?
So I'll answer that, but let me first just say I've just been trying to watch the chat a little bit, and one thing I just want to acknowledge is just how intense this moment is. You know, there are those who are, you know, adamant that they'd like to be back in person because they feel that this is the best way for them to learn. There are others who are equally adamant on the other side, saying that, you know, they'd like for all of the classes to be online, and they'd like for everybody to be online. I want to acknowledge just that we're in this really very difficult moment. We do have the mandate to respond to the way that the system has declared. We'll be doing as much as we can to offer in-person instruction according to that mandate. As the Chancellor indicated at the outset, we do feel that we have done everything that we can, put in place all of the protocols, all of the health guidelines to make this as safe as possible. We are living in a really, you know, a different moment, a strange moment. And there's almost surely nothing we're going to be able to do that is going to remove completely the challenge, the anxiety of this moment. And I just want to acknowledge that and know that there are going to be really intense feelings about things in all different ways. And so we're trying to work through as best we can. We want to work with you in the best ways possible to make it so that you can proceed through this, your educational journey here at UNC Asheville in the best ways possible for you. So we're here, we're ready to hear from you, we're ready to work with you. And I just wanted to acknowledge that as I can hear and feel the intensity of that conversation really rising. So I just wanted to say that. The question was whether or not we will have things wiped down. We will have the wipes available, and we're hoping that students will do both before and after wipe downs using the wipes that we provide, and that's the way that we will manage during the day. There was a question earlier about how often will things be cleaned. There will be cleaning staff in every building all throughout the day, every day, and there will be electrostatic cleaning throughout at the beginning of every day. So we will have much more extensive cleaning. We'll have all kinds of things available, like hand sanitizers and wipes and all of those things available all throughout all of the buildings. But we still are going to ask that students take on some of the responsibility, you know, before you come in and work on a space that may be shared, that you take a wipe, you wipe it down, and then afterwards you wipe it down. And by doing both of those things that we together, we can make sure that our spaces are as clean as possible.
Thank you, Provost. To your point about collaborating on these initiatives, a question was raised in the chat about the fact that everyone has different learning styles, and would UNC Asheville consider creating a group of faculty and students who could collaborate on innovative ideas for making online and distance learning the most effective for everyone? Just a suggestion from the chat.
So I would actually, so we do have essentially that kind of functionality within the Center for Teaching and Learning. their role is to help bring faculty together. They already have had workshops, they're learning circles, they're all of these kinds of small group gatherings for folks to think about innovative and creative ways and to share those ideas with each other. What we have not done is open that those circles up to students to participate, but I will certainly talk with Linda Hewitt, who is the new director of the CTL, and I'm sure she would be open to hearing from students about ideas, about ways that students can be involved in that process. So happy to share that, welcome that, and so that's what, I'll make sure that Linda Hewitt is aware of that, but certainly I want to encourage students who have ideas to reach out to Linda Hewitt and express those to her.
Thank you very much. Chancellor, one question for you, and then we'll pass it over for some final remarks. There is a question from Sophie. Thank you, Sophie, for bringing that question up several times about the process of responsibility. So who accepts responsibility? Is it UNC Asheville or the system for any injuries or illnesses or deaths due to COVID-19? And perhaps, Heather, you may also jump in on this piece as well.
Heather, let's let you go first, please.
Yeah. So I said when I introduced myself that I am the general counsel of the university. So I will answer this like the general counsel for the university initially, which is the UNC system is the legal entity and we are following the guidance and direction of the UNC system. So from a legal liability perspective, which seems to be one of the focuses of your question, that is where it would be. From a moral and ethical perspective, I would say that everybody on this screen, on the senior staff feels this responsibility and have felt it for a long time. And Chancellor, perhaps you'd want to add to that piece.
Yeah, this is a once in a century event. And we have an academic mission that needs to respond to that reality that we're not just in a bubble here in Asheville or at UNC Asheville. We are actually a part of a large number, thousands really, of colleges and universities across the United States that are assessing their own ability to open as safely as possible and to continue to allow our academic mission to move forward. We also are concerned about the continuity of employment of our faculty and staff. We're also concerned about the anxiety that our students, our faculty and staff have at these moments that I think Provost Campbell said so aptly is at a very, very high level. I can assure you that all of us on the senior staff also worry, also are deeply concerned, also are putting everything that we can into ensuring as we return to in-person instruction that we do this in the safest possible conditions, as I've said many, many times. But in the end, the safety is really the centrifuge that emanates from all of us doing the right thing. First of all, to stay healthy. Second of all, to follow the proven by science protocols that can ensure as well as possible that we remain a safe and functioning community. Remember, for a number of our students, this is a place where they very much want to be personally and intellectually engaged, and that is the safest thing for them, or that is the safest and only place they can get broadband. And so for a variety of reasons, including the request, the directive of the UNC system, we want to get back safely to the opening of the institution for in-person instruction as well as hybrid and some online. And we want to reconvene safely as possible and continue the work that we need to do. We will be prepared, again, with the guidance, I believe, of the UNC system, together with health experts on whose advice we are depending, to pivot if need be. And we have all sorts of protocols in place to be able to do that as well, just as every one of the public and private institutions that's resuming in-person instruction this fall has implemented and has prepared for. Let me just simply wrap this up by saying, and I appreciate many of the emotions, the thoughts, the opinions that are being expressed in the chat. Thank you for that. I share some of the anxiety that some of you have. I take responsibility for what we are doing because we are being asked to do it. And we, of all institutions, are trying to do it in the best possible way because of our history as a community that cares for one another anyway, and that has the scale where we have a better chance maybe than some of the other larger institutions. I'm not an expert, I can't make that judgment, but I believe our scale allows us to do this with a better chance of success if we do it right. That's going to depend on all of us. I'm particularly and need to conclude my remarks by offering up a thanks to our heroic faculty and our heroic staff who literally have not stopped. Most have not had any break this summer. Most have been designing courses, teaching summer session courses, preparing for hybrid, online, or in-person courses for the fall. Our staff has cleaned this campus to the extent where we can open safely. And we do believe we not only are following best protocols, our staff has ensured through their literally time and effort and expertise that we are as ready as we can be, or we wouldn't be opening. So I must give a shout out to those of our colleagues who have worked so hard. Students, we hear you. I hear those who are excited to be back. I hear those who really are actually not willing to come back. And I hear those that are simply nervous about what this is all going to be like. We're putting in place those protocols that we think will keep us all safe. Let's follow those. Let's lean together. Let's do what UNC Asheville has done really well for almost 100 years. And let's reconvene for in-person instruction as appropriate. And let's move forward together to the best extent possible. Rest assured that we will be monitoring all of the conditions on our own campus, improving where we need to, but always aware if it is not working, we together with the Board of Governors and the UNC system leaders will make a decision to pivot. And so please return if that is what you're choosing to do, and we are welcoming you back with open arms. Thanks everybody. Thanks for being on this call today. And we'll do a series of town halls over the next several weeks, even after we've opened, so that we can continue to address questions, hear comments, and hear concerns from our students. Thanks everybody for your time. I'm grateful to all of you, and I truly believe we can do this together. Thank you.